What's going on, everybody? I'm Winston A. Marshall, aka The Swaggy Blurred, and this is my spoiler review of Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 8, the season finale. Now, if this is your first time here, please be sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, throw a thumbs up on this video, man, and get in the conversation. Let me know what you're thinking about the season finale, all the stuff that we saw, man. Again, this is going to be a spoiler review, so I am going to get into the stuff that's happening and then my overall thoughts on the season. And then, of course, where I think we're going to ultimately end up going forward with the DCU, specifically, even though Supergirl is next and whatnot, James Gunn has really said that this is a setup for Man of Tomorrow, that is really the next connecting piece from this season. So, obviously, the end of the last episode, again, spoiler review, so I hope you have watched it already. But at the end of the last episode, we get out of Earth X, Chris feeling some type of way about being the angel of death, Argus breathing down their neck. They turn over the device. Chris turns himself in. We start off with him in jail, and essentially just the idea of everybody trying to move on one way or the other. Chris won't see any of his friends. He's fully isolated himself in prison and rejects visitors. And then we get a lot of just like interesting stuff of how people are dealing with life post this Earth X adventure. So Economos and Amelia, and Ads isn't really there. So it's really Economos and Amelia. They're back now working with Argus, and they're helping, Sasha Bordeaux and Tim Meadows' character. I cannot remember his name again for some reason. It's terrible. But helping all of Argus go through these doors to try and find another dimension. And this is where all of a sudden we're like, okay, well, what is the grand scheme here? What are they looking for? They were told they're looking for resources, other things to potentially use on Earth. What specifically is here? And it's very clear as things go on and we start seeing all these demonic dimensions, and the fact that Lex is actually signing off with Rick on the idea of potentially a black hole universe that they accidentally open up, that they're looking for something bad. They're looking for something that could potentially cause a little bit of destruction. And it's funny because you start to see the people of Argus, the actual agents, start to fully reject what Argus is doing over time because they're watching their friends just get murdered over and over and over and over again in these new dimensions. Eventually they find what looks like essentially a peaceful Earth. They're just like planes from the door they opened up. The air is breathable. It's a nice temperature, all that kind of stuff. And Rick goes, great, we found it. This is perfect. He presents his plan, and the plan that he actually got directly from Lex is a world in which essentially you will just send metahumans, and that's it. They are be trapped on this planet forever, and the fact that they have mastered the tech enough to make the door constantly appear wherever on the other side, and they could even cut out the middle part of having to go through I can't remember what it's called, the universal closet, whatever the thing is. It's just escaping my mind right now. You can cut all that out and just essentially throw them in. So very similar to, not quite the Phantom Zone, sort of the Phantom Zone, similar to like Reed's prison or to the Negative Zone in Marvel, but essentially in this case you're just sending them to another dimension and you're like, all right, bye, and you're gonna leave metahumans there. Ultimately, Chris's friends bail him out of jail using some of that drug money that Vidge had from all of the drug busts that he had, and they go and they finally talk to him and they convince him that they need to work together and stick together, and that them being a family is what's really kept them going. And in between those moments, we get to see flashbacks of Chris and Harcourt and the night on the boat in question, and how they went on this rock cruise together and they shared this kiss, and then Harcourt ran. And you see Bordeaux specifically having the most issues with what Argus is doing and talking to Harcourt about wanting to leave, that she doesn't believe in the mission anymore, not just because she's a metahuman herself, but she's just like, I can't do this. We see Ads going to talk to her wife and to finally let her go and go, you know what? Yeah, we talked about the stream about this pet store and whatnot, but I realized if I keep following the actual thing that makes me happy, I'm going to kill you. And if I do what you want to do, I'm going to feel trapped and I'm going to resent you. So the final kibosh is put on their relationship, and they say goodbye in a very heartfelt kind of moment. We see Economos getting along with Eagly. We see all of this stuff tying up, and then finally, as Peacemaker accepts the friend's plan and specifically asks Harcourt if she really felt something, she finally admits that she did, and she said it meant everything. He's gung-ho for it. They take all that drug money. They start their own business called Checkmate collectively as a group. They include Bordeaux in there. They include Tim Meadows' character in there. They include Judo Master. They all leave Argus to join them together. And you think, great, they're starting off together and we're going to do stuff. And now we're going to get into what's going on, because this is the weird part of the episode. So when you look at the actual time, the scroll at the bottom of the episode, it looked like this episode was like 90 minutes long. It had this whole extra chunk of time kind of on the back end that was attached to the episode. So all of a sudden, Chris is going back to the motel he's been staying at. He gets a black bag thrown over him. He gets handcuffed, dragged back to Argus. And then we see the door to this alternate dimension that they found open. Rick Flag says, hey, thanks for volunteering. He goes, when did I? And apparently when he was signing whatever paperwork previously, signed away his life rights and said that he would be part of this experiment, so it's legal. So I'm assuming this is when he got bailed out. So Chris gets thrown into the other dimension, uncuffed. Rick says to him, this is for Ricky, shuts the door behind him. Chris is now trapped by himself, and he explains to Peacemaker saying, we need to see what it does on a human body. Thank you for volunteering, and now we'll know. And this is essentially the first person that gets sent to this planet called Salvation, which is a prison. And as the door closes and Chris stands up and he starts to freak out because he realizes he doesn't have a way to get back, you start to hear all of these kind of prehistoric like growls and groans and shit like that, which is not good for our hero. And then the episode ends. Now, I will be honest, I wasn't one of those people that I was hardcore waiting for some sort of crazy cameo at the end. I wasn't waiting for Blue Beetle, even though that was talked about and teased. I wasn't waiting for Booster Gold. As Kumail Nanjiani showing up for the premiere and everything else kind of felt like that was teasing it. I thought maybe we would see something where this tech was tied to Brainiac, which is fine that we didn't, but it felt like a long shot. But I will tell you what this episode did, honestly. It took, to me, what felt like a really good season that gave us a lot of very intricate character study and got to know more about these people and gave us some more lore world building. Like, all of that was going in there, I took it all as a positive because I felt like we were eventually going to go somewhere. A lot of people were complaining it felt like nothing was really happening throughout the season, and my thought process always remained, it's okay. A lot of times when you're telling these kind of expanded stories like this, it is more interesting to explore the characters and you'll get your overall arching moment. So for example, I thought that Keith was going to come barreling back through the door somehow because he obviously was alive. I thought maybe he'd be some alternate version of Deathstroke, since he lost an eye in the process, or whatever. He might just come as himself and try and wreck shop, or whatever may potentially happen one way or the other. I thought Brainiac may have shown up, like I mentioned before, that are a big bad for the next film. All of that would come together. None of that happened. So it felt like when this was all said and done, nothing happened. I mean, yes, we now have Salvation and Chris is trapped on this other planet, but while that did kind of move things forward, it reminds me of Brave New World, this idea of oh man, we got this giant celestial sitting in the middle of the ocean and it's made this new element, adamantium. And so then there was kind of some talks about the different countries that want the adamantium. And so sure, the world is shaped a little differently now, but to just kind of have that be the little placeholder that didn't actually then lead to any direct things happening. War didn't really break out, even though it was kind of teased that it might at one point. Sure, you had the leader and shit like that. I know I'm going off on a tangent here. It was just a lot of stuff that just ultimately amounted to nothing other than, well, Ross is in jail now and he's a Hulk. Okay. What did we push forward about anything? What really changed that couldn't have essentially been said, like you essentially told us that the adamantium existed? Nothing really changed. Did Sam change? Didn't feel like it. I kind of have got the same vibe here. Now, the characters I do feel have evolved a little bit, but there was nothing we ever solved. Earth X ended up being inconsequential other than, I guess, showing Chris some things about himself, but it didn't affect how we were acting with certain things. we didn't see Keith come get his revenge. I'm assuming that's going to come at some point later, because otherwise why show us the whole moment of him still being alive and everything like that? No overall villain got their just desserts. I'm not saying that it means that the villains always have to like go down or anything like that, but like what this ending reminded me of was the frustration that I personally had with House of the Dragon this past season, and part of that was because of some episode count mess ups and budgetary shit and whatever, where you essentially feel like you ended before you wrapped up what you were trying to deal with. It's like, okay, we got the new Dragon Riders and no battle pursues, no nothing. It's just like a scene. It's that kind of shit. It was like, I felt that way about the first season of Titans. And that's actually where I went from liking the show to falling off pretty quickly just after that first season, because the first episode of the second season actually felt like the season finale of the first season. Essentially, what you ended up happening is this idea of Trigon potentially being a real horrible threat, and Rachel and all this kind of stuff, and you just end the season before anything happens on what feels like the penultimate episode. And then you have the big fight to start off the new season. It didn't make sense. So this is the same thing, kind of trapping Chris here, but you didn't wrap anything up. Your big wrap up was his friends being like, "Hey man, you got to have friends." That was our big thing. I think what frustrates me about that a little bit is knowing that I have seen James have that same conversation with us in like the Guardians movies, but we still did something and move the overall plot forward. Like, this felt just like world building, and that kind of sucks when you consider that the first season of Peacemaker did plenty of world building, did plenty of character study in between, and all that kind of stuff, but it felt like we accomplished something. When I got to the end of this episode, because things felt kind of smushed together and put in random orders, and I've seen Rick Flag kind of go full evil now, because he's really getting in bed with Lex Luthor for out of pure revenge for his son. Like, I get the motivations, but he's fully kind of signed his life away, and knowing the Rick Flag that did make some compromises in Creature Commandos, but there was still something there of him being like a decent person. I know he ended up fighting a lot of the Creature Commandos at the end there. Some he was chilling with, some he wasn't, but like, there was nothing that came out of that made me think to myself, man, he hates metas at this point. Like, he wants to see them wiped off the planet the way that Lex talks about it. There's nothing that has really been provided to do that. The fact that Sacha Bordeaux, again, who is also a meta, it was on his payroll, seemed like he was actually pretty okay with them. He just, like anything else, like, sure, he was frustrated, but the dots just weren't immediately connecting for me in that way. It almost felt like the same sensation I got watching, I know I'm getting a lot of MCU sensations from this, but watching WandaVision: A Multiverse of Madness. Yeah, I see how these are related, but it doesn't really feel like you really did a crossover here and made that through line work. So in terms of how I ultimately feel about this season, because of how I felt like this wasn't really a great sticking of the landing, this kind of went for me from like, hey man, I don't know what everybody's talking about, this is like a 4.9, 5.0, like we rolling, baby, to drop into like a 3, maybe a 2.5, like right down the middle type shit, just because it felt very unfulfilling. I don't know, it felt like, have you ever seen like some really good food advertised on TV, on DoorDash, or anything like that, and then when you finally get it, you're like, okay, there's some things I don't necessarily like about it. It's a little cold, but like the flavor's there, all that kind of stuff. But then when you kind of finish, you're not full, you're not really sad, you're still hungry, you're not satiated, and you realize that you had invested a lot in this meal. In that case, it'd be money. Or time if you made it yourself or something like that. In this case, I invested 8 weeks into this and was really enjoying the ride, but I don't feel like we went anywhere. Like, that is the part that I think was a little off-putting. Now, again, I think there is stuff to chew on as far as where the DCU is going, so I do appreciate the fact that, again, we have set up establishment of multiple dimensions far beyond what Lex was doing in Superman. We have set up a potential Keith coming back at some other point. We have set up that Chris is trapped on this other planet. There's no way that that's just the end of him, especially knowing that this is a prison that Rick and Lex collectively want to use and have convinced the government to use going forward for metahumans. Like, there is stuff that is coming down the pipeline. But, like, I think about the Penguin, just to keep pulling from other, you know, art and media here. I think about the Penguin, and by the end of it, Oz is the new, like, Gotham king, like, kingpin. That is ultimately where we got by the time that was over. People died. Like, all sorts of characters, like, you know, especially seeing Sophia Falcone and how her whole evolution and what she was dealing with and everything else. We went on a journey, so not only did we set up what's coming potentially next, you gave us something to sink our teeth into. It wasn't just a character study. Things move, and I think you need both. I think episodes, I think a handful of episodes can be just character study, but an entire season, I can ultimately admit the error of my ways where I said that I was kind of okay with that before, but I guess that was because I always believed that we would get something more. So, like, I know people that, of the Guardians movies, they don't like 2 as much as the first, because it felt like, man, it's all joke, and it's all this, that, and the other. But I liked the relationship building, but we still had a overall baddie to deal with that also helped us grow in dealing with ego. And so the overall general arching conversation about family and how families can be so poisonous to us and so detrimental and all that kind of stuff, it still got wrapped around the idea of ego and dealing with a big bad that was trying to destroy things. You know what I'm saying? And wreck shop. Who did we defeat here? Did we stop the Nazis of Earth X from invading? You know, did we dismantle Argus? Did we realize Lex was evil and kind of try and put him back in the cage, but he escaped? No, none of that. We really kind of didn't. It felt like Superman 1.5, but Superman and the Justice Gang and all that, with the exception of that cameo at the beginning of the season, weren't really involved, and that kind of sucks. That really bums me out. But I will say this: I do think the world that James Gunn has been building is incredibly interesting and very fascinating. I love everything that I got to see acting-wise out of this ensemble cast, but especially out of John Cena. He knocked it out of the park, in my opinion. I am excited to see how Salvation plays into this and how Superman takes this and the rest of the world's metahumans, and specifically, obviously, the heroes. Like, you know, Lois is going to have a field day about all the civil rights violations that are potentially involved in that. You know, she's going to be writing her ass off. But yeah, I feel like I had an empty calorie meal that I thought was going to be really satiating, and it really wasn't. But that's my 2 cents. I'm curious what you think. Do you agree? Are you like, bro, yeah, it was a whole lot of nothing? Or were you like, here's where I disagree with you? Please let me know in the comments. Like, get in there and let me know how you are feeling about this entire thing. But all that being said, I want to thank each and every one of you that watched these Peacemaker videos with me and stuff like that. I got other stuff going on the channel. I got the Blurred Breakdown on Monday, 6 p.m. Pacific. I may not be doing one this coming Monday. I've got a lot of work and 2 major auditions that I've got to take care of. So I may not be able to do one this Monday, but I will keep you posted, so keep your eyes glued to social media. Tuesday, Spill the Tequila with John Roca. Wednesdays, Birds in the Hood with Jay Washington. Fridays, if you're watching this Thursday night into Friday, I'll be on Capes and Cows in the morning. Myself, Christian Harloff, Chris Carr. As well as the reactions I've been doing with Christian of Demon Slayer. You can see my Tanjiro robe kimono behind me. You can check all of those out. We set it up as a collaboration. It's on Christian's channel, but it'll be linked to mine as well, so you can look at all of that. So check all of that out, as well as other stuff I got here on the channel. Check out one of these other 2 videos you see up here. And with that, I'm going to get up out of here, y'all. So y'all have a wonderful rest of your day. Come on back for the good stuff, and I'll see you on the next one, man. Peace.